Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of The Situation Right Now. Now, we have just been seeing images of what has been happening at the Harare Magistrates Court at Rotten Road, just a few 100 meters away from us, where there was the sentencing of the MDC Alliance Youth Executive Makomborero Haruzivishe, who has been given an effective 14-month jail sentence. He is accused of inciting violence. And now, we also saw the chaos that happened around the court, where after the sentence, lawyers and the MDC Alliance spokesperson Fadzaima area attempted to address a press conference just outside the court, and the police would have none of it. Now, we're going to be getting into detail on what happened at the Harare Magistrates Court and its effect on democracy and its effect on the MDC Alliance or opposition politics in Zimbabwe. And to have this discussion, I'm joined by a seasoned lawyer in studio this afternoon, also the suspended mayor of Harare, Jacob Mafume, is also a member of the MDC Alliance. We're going to be having a discussion and looking at what happened and what it means to law and justice in Zimbabwe. Now, thank you very much, Mr. Mafume, for joining us this afternoon. Now, let us just cut into the chase. What is your understanding of the events that unfolded at the Harare Magistrates Court this afternoon?
Well, thanks, Blessed. My understanding of the events is that there's been a conviction. Makomborero was convicted just before Easter. It certainly was not a Good Friday for him, not a Good Friday for MDC youth, not a Good Friday for the youths in this country in general. He was convicted on those two charges, one for insulting public violence and another for obstruction a peace officer, a Zitwe. But what is peculiar and which we disagree with vehemently is that he was convicted for whistling. And you know, how do you whistle? How does a whistle incite? Who was incited? There were no witnesses called who said, I was incited to do this. There was no violence that was said to have been proved to have happened. No shop was burnt, no person was beaten, and no one died, as it were. But that is what happened. He was convicted nonetheless. The police officer, he is said to have obstructed, did not come to court. And in the ruling, he is said to have resisted by sitting down. Now, if you sit down, is it resisting? So there are questions around the judgment. Then it came to sentencing. Today, another tragic sentence, 14 months. Now, it's bizarre. He's a first offender. There's supposed to be community service. There's supposed to be a fine. He's a youthful offender. Even if we were to say he was guilty of whistling and guilty of sitting down as it were, would you think that you would get a total of the sentences is actually longer than what you are saying? He got 24 months, which was then reduced to 14 months. In other words, a portion was suspended, but it is hanging over his head like the sword of Damocles, so that if he is convicted of another offense of a similar nature in the next 5 years, he will serve that portion. And he was then sentenced to 12 months in prison for the other offense. The 12 months 6 months, was then suspended. He's supposed to serve 6 months effectively. The magistrate then probably thought she was being merciful, then said, look, these sentences run concurrently, meaning that you end up serving the longer sentence because the other one finishes at the same time as the first sentence, 6 months finishes. But you still have those 6 months hanging over your head like the sword of Damocles. Yeah.
Amazing. But let us talk about also, before we interrogate the issues, let us talk about what happened around the sentencing. Let us talk about the issues that around the sentencing, the protests, the people who were around that. From your party, I suppose.
Well, I think the youths are not happy. The young people are not happy. Mako is a student leader, he's a youth member, and they want to show solidarity. Every movement has people who show solidarity. They believe in the cause that is speaking about. What they want are simple things. They want jobs, they want a better life, they want free education, and they want a democratic environment for which they need to express themselves. And what they can do is, if one of their colleagues is caught in such a situation, they show solidarity. That is what the youths do. That is what the party is all about. That is what we need to show as human beings. We need to show solidarity and send a message that what is happening here is not good. It is a constitutionally enshrined right to do so under Section 59 of our Constitution, and the various rights that we have, freedom of expression in our bills, to be in solidarity with the political cause that we believe in.
This sentence, in your view, because you are arguing over a number of things, you raised the issue of first offender, you also raised the issue that the conviction itself is not justified. Why do you think a whole judicial officer who's sworn to fairness and impartiality before the law would misdirect themselves to that extent to achieve what?
Well, we don't know. That is why we probably will have to appeal. The accused has a right to appeal within the stipulated number of days and point out to the various misdirections, of which I think there are many. I'm sure his lawyers are going to find more misdirections, but well, the first misdirection is that who was incited? Who was incited to violence? No one was brought to court who was incited. What were the words used? How do you determine that whistling?
But my question is, what is the motive? Do you have a motive?
Well, I wouldn't ascribe a motive for that to do that. But what I know is the effect of what is happening. It is to send a chilling message to people who express themselves. Send a chilling message to those who would want to exercise their freedom.
Why would a judicial officer want to send any chilling message apart from serving justice?
Well, that is what we need to find out when we do the appeal. That is where we look at the reasons. Because what a judiciary officer must do is put the reasons of her judgment within the four corners of the judgment. If there are ulterior reasons, then obviously they are not in the four corners of the judgment. But what has been put in the four corners of the judgment is what we are criticizing. It's not sufficient to reach the same conclusions that the judicial officer reached at. How she then missed it, it happens in life. Maybe there's something that was missed. Maybe there was some lack of understanding of a particular principle of the law. And that is what the lawyers will have to point out. And that is what we have been pointing out since the time of the conviction. We will attack the judgment within its four corners.
There are videos that have been shown of Makomborero Haruzivishe at Impala business area where it appears, or it's alleged that it was him who was locking workers inside. And I mean, certainly that conduct, if it's true, it's despicable, is it not?
Oh, what is despicable? What is despicable is, first of all, this was not the case he was facing today. The case he was facing was for whistling, you know, like what you do when you are chasing cows, and then for sitting down when he was asked to walk into a police car. So that is the case he was facing. The case of Impala is as you know, is still under judicial consideration, and one would not want to comment in a manner that would be prejudicial to the interest. But if you are locked in your own office, surely you can just unlock yourself, as it were, and one would want to know what is the crime of being locked in your own office after people were complaining about someone who had been tortured to the point of death, someone when they needed the information. But be that as it may, that is not what he was being tried with here. This one was for whistling and for sitting down. Now, in what democratic society do you get 14 months and the accumulation of 24 months, 6 months, 30 months for that conduct? Even our criminals, people who steal, people who actually beat up people who actually do a lot of things, they pay fines and have community service. There must be a proportion to the sentencing, especially if you are a first offender.
Do you think there is a judicial capture in Zimbabwe?
The judiciary has certainly behaved in a manner that we have not understood for some time in relation to the MDC alliance. It has behaved in a manner that would lead one to reasonably conclude that if you are the MDC alliance or you are an MDC alliance member, it is hardly a good day in court.
What is special about the MDC alliance that the judiciary would want to deal with you?
Well, you'll have to ask them.
But you should know.
We believe that we are Zimbabweans. We exercise our constitutional rights as normal. We have our president.
But the NCA does not complain about the same. The MDCT led by Douglas Monzora does not complain about the same.
Yeah, but we appear like we are a red cloth to a bull. If you were speaking in the intro of our of your program, that our spokesperson was trying to speak. Your journalists were there and many other journalists were there, and our spokesperson was prevented from speaking. Can you explain why the police did that? Can you explain why she could not be allowed to talk? Whilst when any other party can hold a press conference anyway, any other person can hold a press conference anyway and speak. What was the crime? And can you find a reason for that? I certainly cannot find reasons for irrational behavior. Irrational people do irrational things. And more often than not, they do have irrational reasons. It is beyond me. What I know as a lawyer is that our spokesperson had a democratic right to communicate what had happened to a member of the party and was prevented. Is there a reason for that?
There's COVID-19. I actually looking at the pictures and the videos. The police appeared to be saying that there's no social distancing and they are worried about
between the vaccinated journalists. The journalists who are frontline.
But vaccination does not mean we should behave recklessly.
Yeah, but you were saying we were being protected from the journalists because our spokesperson was only one person and she had two other people and they were socially distanced from each other. The journalists probably were the ones that were many. And the journalists, as far as I know, talking to you, are reasonable people. If the police had not intervened, or the police had intervened in a manner to regulate, to say, can you stand 1 meter apart? If you refuse to do so, then we'll break up this press conference.
It's not because you are known of being violent as a party.
How do you get to be violent when you are standing as a spokesperson? But I would not harm a fly. I certainly would not harm an ant. We have no record of violence anyway. We have been beaten, gassed, killed. We have more supporters that have died since 2000 that belong to the MDC than any other party, save for Zapo.
More than a dozen of your leaders, Charlton Wende is being accused of treason. Fadzaima herself has got allegations of demonstration during COVID-19.
But we don't charge ourselves. Remember,
Doesn't it show a proposition of violence amongst you?
You must remember that a person does not charge themselves. You don't arrest yourself. What our constitution says is that you must arrest people on reasonable grounds. Is it a reasonable ground that Fadzai was prevented from speaking at a press conference? Is it a reasonable ground that some of these arrests happened of people walking? A person does not arrest themselves. The person who arrests you is the one that is to explain in terms of the constitution whether they have reasonable grounds for arresting you and why they have done so. And in many cases, a lot of these people are arrested on flimsy grounds. It's as if being an MDC Alliance member is a crime.
Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the situation right now. I'm Blessed Mhlanga, and I'm joined in studio by MDC Alliance member, a senior member of the MDC Alliance, who is the Deputy Secretary for local government, and we are discussing the issue around the sentencing of Makomborero Haruzivishe, a young leader in the MDC Alliance who is in the MDC Youth Executive. Now, Haruzivishe has been sentenced to 20 years, 24 months in prison, of which 10 were suspended on condition that he does not commit a similar offense in the next 5 years. He was facing 2 counts. The second count, he was sentenced to 12 months in prison, and 6 were also suspended. So effectively, Makomborero Haruzivishe is going to serve 14 months in prison, and this 14 months he will serve concurrently with the 6 months on the count of resisting orders from the police. But let us just show you a small clip of what happened in court this afternoon as we continue with the conversation. But you just saw the scenes of what is unfolding at the courts, and this has just happened in less than 2 hours ago, where the police were trying to maintain law and order around the courts after hundreds of young students and youth came to the court to protest against the jailing of Makomborero Haruzivishe, who still has another matter that is pending before the Magistrate's Court. Now, I'm joined here by Jacob Mafume, and we are discussing these events, how they are unfolding and what they mean to our democracy. Now, Mafume, you were talking about the issue of, something that is against you in this entire system. What are you doing as a party to ensure that all these things, we get to a point where justice is observed as justice and not as something that is targeted against you?
Yeah, we like I said, we have to appeal. We have to use and exhaust all remedies that are legally available to us. We will have to create a situation where we adopt national advocacy processes to highlight to the nation and to advocate and clearly show the nexus and the link between certain reactions of the system if you are an MDC Alliance member. So we will follow the legal route, as it were.
Is it working for you? Because your party, from what I know from the number of times I've listened to, every time a judgment has gone against you, you have cried foul and have said the judiciary is captured.
Yeah.
So why do you continue going?
And where are the times when the judgments have gone for us?
When Job Scala was acquitted in Masvingo for on allegations of treason, that's one time where you spoke about you.
But what
were silent about.
We didn't remain silent. What we then said is that he ought not to have been under trial at all. He ought not to have been facing that charge of treason at all. He ought not. Because when you are talking about the judicial system, you don't start with the judges alone. It is a whole process. The laws themselves, how they are applied. Everyone else can hold a press conference. You can't hold a press conference. Have you ever seen a scrum of riot police and journalists and party representatives at any other party's press conference? You are a seasoned reporter, you've been in the trenches, and now you are behind or you are in front of the camera. You have experienced everything. The scenes that you just showed to your viewers, where there is an almighty rugby scrum with the riot police with batons, journalists with their cameras, and so forth, with a baton stick fighting with the pen at a press conference outside a courtroom. Where have you seen such scenes? Where do they, okay? And so we then complain. Why are we not allowed to talk at the court? Are we being a crybaby when a riot police stops you from talking? Certainly there's something wrong.
Let us look at Ostalos, gift of Ostalos. I watched a video over the Easter holidays when he was threatening that they are going to unleash the idols of the winter. And honestly, any reasonable law enforcement agent would be on the lookout after such threats, wouldn't it be?
Well, first of all, is that a threat? Secondly, who says that it is an unlawful to gather? Our constitution guarantees protection to gather, freedom of assembly, to demonstrate, and so forth. It is up to the police to look at the conduct of the people who are gathering, whether it is violent or not. You don't anticipate without reason. And what we were having today was our spokesperson trying to speak, people simply standing at a respectful distance outside the court. And that, even that idea of speaking was prohibited. So when you prohibit speech, then you are getting into dangerous territory. You have never seen it for any other political party. Other political party speaks, and even Zanulites, parties like our colleagues where Obet Kutu came from, are allowed to speak without riot police becoming part of the journalists, cameras, and baton sticks. No, it only happens at an MDC Alliance conference, and this time there is no respect of the sanctity of the court and separation of powers, whereby one can speak outside the court.
And lastly, some have blamed you and your party leadership of sacrificing the young, of letting the young out there while you sit in the comfort of your offices, and the young are arrested and beaten, and you are not leading from the front. What is your response to that?
People forget when you were old, you were also young once. We were also part and parcel of demonstration during that time. We were also youth, we were also students. Most of the leadership you see in the leadership of the MDC, you know them, you went to college with them. They are not cowards. They are not afraid of a demonstration. They are not afraid of the dictatorships. They are not afraid of being in the forefront. And as the preacher said, Solomon, there's a time and a season for everything. There's a time and a season when a person is young. And when a person is young, they do things that are done by the youth. The youths have no apologies. The youths expect no trophies for being in the streets. The youth expect no trophies for wanting a job. They expect no trophy for wanting free education. There is no sacrifice. The person who is sacrificing is the person who beats up the youth for demonstration. The person who arrests the youth for demonstration. That is the person who is engaged in human sacrifice, not those that participate in the pursuance of their freedom. These are countries that came through sacrifice, and they will continue to come through sacrifice of both the young and the old. No one has been sacrificed. We just desire a good life for all Zimbabweans.
Maybe in parting, what words would you want to tell the people of Zimbabwe around the events that have unfolded at the Harare Magistrates Court today and the fate of Makomborero Haruzivishe?
Democracy is a tree that has to be watered. There is a thin line between authoritarianism and democracy. And people can easily slide to the old days. We are seeing the old days of press conference being prevented. We are seeing the youths being convicted. We are slowly and surely regressing in terms of our democratic nation. And we have to be able to stop that regression.
Thank you very much, Jacob Mafume, for joining us this moment. Now, we were talking about what has just unfolded at the Harare Magistrates Court, where a journalist, freelance journalist, was actually beaten up by police and had a deep cut on his hand. He's being attended to, as we speak, at a hospital. And there were scenes of violence and chaos at the Harare Magistrates Court following the sentence, the jailing of Makomborero Haruzivishe, who's going to be behind bars, or who's going to be jailed for the next 14 months, although he still has another case that is pending before the courts. We'll continue to follow the matter and we'll continue to closely bring it to you. I want to thank Mafume for coming in through a very short notice, because this was just a special programming that we brought to you by Heart and Soul TV Current Affairs, to be able to just get into the gist of things, to unravel what is happening, because we care, and when we know, you should know. This is me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, on the situation right now here in Heart and Soul TV and radio. Till next time.